put you in my pocket any day.
Thank you.
Karen.
We're having too much fun this morning. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria, and I'm pleased to be the chair of the California Big City Mayors. I'm proud to be here today, leading this bipartisan coalition of mayors from the state of California's 13 largest cities, representing over 11 million Californians. I want to thank my fellow mayors for being here today, with a special thank you to our Governor Gavin Newsom for letting us use his press room. Even if the podium's a little higher than the rest of us might want, we still appreciate the hospitality, truly. From San Diego to Sacramento, we serve diverse populations, but we all share an urgent need on state issues of common concern, things like homelessness, housing affordability, jobs and cost of living, and public safety. We're here in the Capitol today with a full day of meetings with our governor, with Senate President Pro Tem, and the Assembly Speaker, as well as other state leaders, to convey our needs from the communities surrounding the state funding and legislative reforms that will help address some of the challenges that we face back in our respective cities. Chief among these challenges is homelessness. As I've said before, California's big city mayors are on the front lines of the state's homelessness and housing affordability crisis. And with state funding through the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program, also known as HAP, California's big cities are doing the heavy lifting on the ground to get people out of dangerous encampments and on a path to permanent housing. And I want to hit one issue off right at the top. As you all know, the state auditor a few weeks ago issued a report that looked at how the state and two cities, including my own, were performing with regard to state homelessness funding. That audit recommended that we provide better data to show the impacts this funding is having on homelessness. Last week, Governor Newsom announced new steps to better track data with regard to spending and to hold recipients of this funding accountable. I want to be clear that we as mayors welcome this accountability. If the state finds local agencies are sitting on funding or not spending it wisely, then they shouldn't get that funding anymore, plain and simple. Our cities are spending local and state funding on programs and facilities that get people off the streets, into shelter, and into housing, ending their homelessness. So we also agree that tracking and reporting data on our outcomes is important. And that's why our mayors have come together today prepared with data that clearly shows the enormous impact that HAP is having because of our efforts. And we're releasing that report today for the public and for decision makers like the governor and the legislature to see. It shows that since the state began funding HEAP and HAP, the 13 largest cities in California have funded 15,772 temporary and permanent homeless shelter beds. We have collectively served 149,851 people, and 42,215 people placed from our programs have then transferred on to temporary or permanent housing solutions. Through one-time investments in HAP, our cities have dramatically increased bed capacity and other programs that get folks back on track. And these programs are clearly working. And we're connecting tens of thousands of Californians to shelter and long-term housing each and every year. With that said, all of us know that this is a very difficult budget year here in the state capitol. And I want to applaud our state leaders for taking early action to address this shortfall and not making any cuts to homelessness funding. Today, we are here to urge state leaders to fully fund HAP Round 6 at no less than $1 billion. Perhaps more importantly, we are asking state decision makers to make this funding permanent. We want to see $360 million in bonus funds that were originally approved years ago, pushed out and put into the hands of mayors across the state, including the ones that are here, so that we can continue to advance those solutions that are making a difference. And again, hold us accountable, as well as other cities, other counties, and continuums of care who also receive this kind of funding for what kinds of results they're putting up or not putting up. We can make meaningful progress on homelessness, but we need the resources to scale our programs and projects for lasting impact. And that's why we need this funding to be made ongoing. We need all agencies receiving these resources to prioritize new beds in their communities. And today, our mayors are laser focused on securing the funds that we need to address homelessness for our cities. But I do want to touch on a couple other urgent issues that we're discussing with decision makers. On housing, our big cities have planned updates that would fund the creation of tens of thousands of new housing opportunities being funded through the Regional Early Action Planning, or REAP program. This program have been proposed for cuts, so we're here today also asking state leaders to reject the proposal to cut $300 million from this important housing program. Our cities have been thinking long-term on homelessness prevention by investing in providing underserved youth with job opportunities and public service. With state funding provided through the Youth Service Corps program, we are collectively on track to hire 10,000 young people. In my own city, in San Diego, we are close to hiring 1,000 young people through our first allocation, and over 80% of our participants are from underserved California communities. We need this funding to also continue. Finally, on the subject of public safety, our coalition has been meeting with leaders all year long on addressing retail theft, and we are encouraged by the packages advanced by the Assembly, the Senate, and the Governor. We see this issue in our communities, and we will continue to push for meaningful action to make sure that repeat offenders can be held accountable. This coalition has pushed for major policy changes in recent years in partnership with the governor and the legislature. Things like conservatorship reform and funding for new behavioral health beds through Proposition 1. This group does not shrink from big issues. And so we ask our state leaders to act with purpose and urgency to provide communities like ours the tools and the funding that we need to carry out our shared responsibility of keeping California's big cities safe and making them more affordable. That is our mission here today in Sacramento, and I want to express my gratitude on behalf of the Big City Mayors Coalition for the continued partnership from our governor and from our state legislative leaders to help us address these challenges that I just mentioned, as well as continue to deliver results for the people that we collectively serve. With that, it's my pleasure to turn the podium over to the mayor of the city of Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me thank Mayor Gloria for the introduction, but let me thank you for your leadership of the Big City Mayors Coalition and your advocacy and all that you do in the city of San Diego. It's always a pleasure to me to be back in Sacramento, especially with the big city mayors, as we are all trying to deal with the same problem. And we know that the number one problem in California are the tens of thousands of people who are unhoused. I want to start off by thanking the state legislature and the governor for supporting California big city mayors in our efforts to address the housing and homelessness crisis in our individual cities and together as a coalition. We know that joining forces with the state is critical to protecting and expanding the significant impact we have been able to make toward bringing Angelenos and Californians alike indoors. The state dollars we get from HAP is absolutely critical. In LA, we were able to move more than 20,000 people inside last year, and this is critical funding to our efforts to provide interim housing and services and permanently house thousands more. That's why I'm in the Capitol today and standing with my fellow big city mayors as we tell you that mayors are on the front lines delivering real results, and we are on the street seeing tangible change in real time. The state has been an invaluable partner, especially the Los Angeles delegation in the Assembly and Senate, and we need our partnership with the state to continue its commitment to help us urgently confront and ultimately end the crisis. This is all of our goals. We have made serious progress forward. This is not the time to dial back or to be satisfied with what has been accomplished so far. With that, I would like to introduce fellow mayor, Mayor Jerry Dyer of Fresno. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Mayor Bass. It is my honor to be here today in Sacramento with my fellow colleagues. We may represent different demographics in our state, different populations, and we may have conservative cities or we may represent a liberal city. But one thing I know about the homeless and housing crisis, it is not a party issue. It is a bipartisan issue. And we are in a crisis in terms of housing as well as homelessness. So I can't say it enough, and I know our fellow mayors can't say it enough, that the Homeless Housing Assistance Program, better known as HAP, is a successful, proven program that has helped transform thousands and thousands of people in the state of California. And as the mayor of the fifth largest city in the state, I have had the privilege of witnessing this transformation firsthand. Over the past year, the city of Fresno has been fortunate enough to experience a 5.6% reduction in overall homelessness, and that's in addition to the past successes that we've experienced in our city. When I took office in 2021, we had over 650 people living on our freeway embankments. They had made that their home. We had over 600 fires on our freeways that year. We had 3 of our homeless population that were run over and killed on our freeways by cars. And I can say today, as we look beyond, we have no unsheltered homeless people living on our freeway in Fresno. And that is true in many other parts of our city as well, where large encampments once existed. Make no mistakes, we are transforming lives with this funding. And I know the recent study, the audit that occurred, may not have seen the transformation of lives, but I can tell you that throughout the state, lives are being transformed. In fact, during the past 3 years in Fresno, we have provided emergency shelter to more than 7,000 unsheltered people in our community. And during that same time, we have permanently housed, with supportive housing, over 3,445 people. And so, since 2021, if you do the math, 1 out of every 2 people that we put or place into emergency shelter has a safe exit into permanent housing. And I believe that is a success no matter how you define success, and which is why it is so important that we continue HAP funding at no less than $1 billion per year. And if HAP is lost, I believe we lose our battle against homelessness in the state of California. For Fresno, my priority has been providing programs and services that deliver hope. Hope to the unhoused, as well as hope to our youth. And so I want to urge our governor and the state legislature to continue funding HAP and also to reject any cuts to the Youth Service Corps program, which I believe also prevents future homelessness in our cities. We currently in Fresno have 223 young adults employed in our Youth Jobs Corps program, and of the 325 who have participated in the program since its inception, 20 have been permanently hired with the city, and many others have moved on to be gainfully employed with good-paying jobs with other businesses within our community. They have gained the skills that they need and acquired good-paying jobs, again, throughout our city. And so I believe we are changing the future of our youth and young adults who need it most. We are rescuing those who are timing out of the foster care system or those who have been touched by the criminal justice system. We are giving them the skills, self-confidence, and experience needed to become successful in life. In fact, this is a message that I received earlier this week from a proud parent of one of those young adults in our program. She said, "Good morning, Mayor. I want to thank you for giving so many young adults the opportunity to get training through the internship program at the City of Fresno. We are so proud of our son and are grateful. He loves his job and is dedicated to learning and growing with the City of Fresno. Thank you for all that you do to make our community stronger through great programs that change lives." And I want to reiterate, as mayors, we are changing lives in California, and we are on the front lines. And our message is simple to the governor and legislators. If you provide the funding, we will provide the results, I promise you. And now it is my privilege to be able to introduce the mayor of the great city of Sacramento, Darrell Steinberg.
Thank you so much, Mayor Dyer. As I am in my last year as mayor of the city of Sacramento and having the opportunity to participate with these great leaders and mayors behind me, I have time for a little bit of reflection. Cities are not homeless service agencies. Cities are not health and human service agencies. Those are the counties of California. And yet, 7 years ago or so, this organization decided that we were going to make an ask for the first direct allocation of homeless funding to cities in California. And we succeeded and created what was then HEAP, which has become HAP. Fancy acronyms, of course, but really what it has meant, as you have heard from my colleagues, is tens of thousands of lives saved and tens of thousands of people with a roof over their heads. Now, I know that it is not possible to prove a negative in life or in politics because the problem is still the problem. And yet, when I think about what California and our cities would look like without this billion-dollar investment every year for the past 4 years, 5 years, now going on 6 years, this problem would be significantly worse than it already is. And so the last thing, even during difficult budget times, that the state ought to do is to go backwards on the most pressing issue and most pressing crisis affecting the state of California. And thankfully, because we have had a steadfast governor and legislative leadership and a legislature that has consistently seen it the same way, that this funding is absolutely crucial, not just to our cities, but to our entire state. They have partnered with us. Along, I want to say, with Carolyn Coleman, I want to introduce you from the League of California Cities, have stood with us to say that even in tough times, this is an investment that we must continue to make. I am always pleased to stand with all my mayors, but to be with Mayor Bass from Los Angeles and to think about 15 years ago when we faced a terrible budget deficit in California. And we sort of lived by a couple of mantras in those negotiations that helped get us through. And one of them was to know that you have to cut, but do everything possible to avoid cuts to those things that represent literally life and death, and to minimize the damage to the people that we then represented and that we continue to represent here today. Well, the principle remains the same. For every one of California cities and for the state, we need to actually move forward by allowing the transition of people from temporary housing into permanent housing, which is why REAP is so important. But to never, ever lose this core investment that we started a half decade or so ago, and make sure that cities have the ability to bring thousands of people from the streets into our shelters, into our tiny homes, into the beginning of transitioning to a better life. And so thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm confident this year that the governor and the legislature will continue to stand with us. Let's make this HAP funding permanent, because 1 year at a time, it's almost after like 5 years, it's become semi-permanent. Let's just make it so in law so that this is a core investment for the people of California. Thank you very much, everybody. Let me now turn it over. Who's the next mayor? I know it was Rex Richards. And it is the great mayor of the city of Bakersfield, our friend Karen Go. Karen, thank you.
Mayor Steinberg, thank you so much for your leadership 7 years ago in bringing big city mayors. You were the chair at that point, bringing us together to this point where we're able to realize investments for our homeless brothers and sisters. As you've heard from my colleagues, homelessness remains the paramount challenge of California's residents. Together, cities hold ourselves accountable for this atrocity in our golden state. Cities have made progress. Big city mayors have led in implementing effective solutions, changing the dire plight and pain of thousands. With HAP investments, more than 149,000 persons who are languishing on our streets have found refuge through shelter, through housing, and through services. In the city of Bakersfield, not only have we tripled our shelter beds, but in recent years, we've more than doubled our affordable housing units. The number of permanent supportive housing units has increased by 292%. For 2 consecutive years, more homeless individuals have found safety inside shelters than sleep on the streets of Bakersfield. But we must persevere. Despite our unrelenting efforts of cities, much work remains to be done to find lasting solutions. The scope, the scale of our mental health, substance use, and housing crisis demands audacious action. Audacious action with intentionality. Sadly, more people enter homelessness than cities have the capacity to serve. For every 6 persons we house in Kern County, 10 enter homelessness. To enter homelessness, we must stop the inflow. Cities look to Sacramento to build upon the progress made by Care Court, SB 43, and other legislative solutions. The human suffering of this crisis cries for stable investments and policy changes to address the root cause of our state's #1 challenge. We must persevere. California cities need dependable, flexible funding, and bold policy reform. We call upon you to support cities with no less than $1 billion in funding, as together we seek sustainable, systemic change to end California's paramount crisis of homelessness. And now it's my pleasure to introduce my neighbor to the north in the valley, Stockton Mayor Kevin Lincoln.
Thank you, Mayor Go. I also want to thank our chair of this Big City Mayors Coalition, Todd Gloria, Mayor Gloria from San Diego, for his leadership and always doing an exceptional job of assembling this group. I also want to thank our parties at the state level for your partnership, every single party at the state level for your partnership and the funds that we've been able to receive, to this point. I think my colleagues have said a lot, and we've covered a lot of ground. But to me, the bottom line is this is a moment that we must continue to meet. We continue to find ourselves in the midst of a huge humanitarian crisis that is not only impacting Stocktonians, but all Californians. And the Big City Mayors Coalition, this group of mayors that represents our great state, we have been working diligently. We've been making a tremendous amount of impact, and we have the data from an accountability standpoint to demonstrate that the work that we're doing is effective. In Stockton alone, we've been able, through the HAP funding, we've been able to build 10 emergency shelters, 9 permanent housing projects, and 4 affordable housing projects. We've been able to expand our bed count by 515 new shelter beds, 429 people housed, and provided services for over 2,229 individuals. That's just in Stockton alone. the impact that we're making, and when we break ground on a project, when we expand our shelter beds, we're not just celebrating a construction project. What we're talking about is opportunity. We're talking about employment. And we're talking about individuals and families in our communities receiving hope and healing that they need to take the next steps in life. That's what this is all about. That's why we're here today. That's why we stand united and take bold actions, reinforcing that need for that $1 billion in ongoing funding for our communities, because lives indeed are being changed. And how does this relate to the Californians for All, the Youth Jobs Program? I'll tell you, in Stockton alone, the funding that we've been able to receive from the state has had a direct impact from a youth jobs program on homelessness as well. Because we partner with 4 different agencies in Stockton that provide nearly 300 jobs for youth and young adults in our community. And one of those agencies works directly with transitional age youth. These are youth in our community that often find themselves aging out of the foster care system and oftentimes find them homeless, right? So when we're investing when we're investing in homelessness, investing in the next generation, we're saving lives, and we're eliminating and reducing generational poverty. So I'm proud to stand alongside my fellow mayors here to again ask for that $1 billion of ongoing fundings and that continued investment in youth jobs for our communities. You show us the money, we'll put it to work, and we'll get real, tangible results that the people of California in our communities can believe in and that can trust. God bless you all. Oh, I'm sorry. Whew. And I'd like to introduce my awesome mayor from Riverside, Patricia Lock-Dawson. I'm sorry for that.
All good. All good. All good. There's a lot going on today. Well, thank you, Mayor Lincoln, and thanks everybody for being here today and for listening to the Big City Mayors. Just as Mayor Lincoln said, give us the money and we invest it, and the state gets a great return on investment. At least in the city of Riverside, for every $1 of state funding we get, we put in $3 of local funding. So that money is leveraged. It's not just disappearing somewhere. And as most of my colleagues have already spoken about, our efforts to secure consistent HAP funding remains our top priority collectively as the mayors representing 11 million residents in the cities of California. Mayor Go referred to this, but this is the inflow and the outflow problem. In Riverside, for every person we help exit homelessness, 6 more become homeless. That's why our work is not done here. And despite this issue, we've made incredible progress in our efforts to address homelessness within the city. This last year, we successfully reduced chronic homelessness by 12%. And one of the focuses that I've had in my office was our transitional aged youth. That's low-hanging fruit. If we can keep them from becoming homeless in the first place, they will stand a much better chance of a hopeful future. And I just got these data this morning that in the last year and a half, we've reduced youth homelessness in the city of Riverside by 73%. 73%. So by investing in programs focused on prevention, we break these cycles that perpetuate homelessness, offering our next generation more hopeful and secure futures. So it's efforts like these that have successfully helped families like the Balin family. Let me just tell you a little story about the Balin family. Lorena and her 8-year-old son, Samuel, have had unstable housing for most or all of Samuel's life, never staying anywhere more than a year. Samuel's grandmother, Patricia, spent 7 years in the Santa Ana River bottom, one of our river communities. Now, with HAP funding, we were able to provide the 3 of them with the support and stability needed to move into their safe place, their first home in years. And Patricia is now excited to use this opportunity to work on her health and spend some time with her family, watching her grandson grow up. And as a matter of fact, Samuel just turned 8 years old. It was his birthday. And so she said it was the perfect birthday gift to be able to give him the gift of a home. We can't forget these are people. These are not numbers. These are people that need our help. They're no longer a statistic, but a testament to successful efforts funded by these state dollars. And the Balin story reminds us all that homelessness is not an inescapable fate if we are intentional and we invest in this issue. We're grateful for the support of our partners, community organizations, and our city's residents and the residents of the state of California in making this progress possible. Now, while these funds have allowed us to expand our outreach efforts, enhance our shelter capacities, and invest in essential supportive services, all of it remains at risk without a commitment by our state to fund this program ongoing. So I stand here united with my big city mayor colleagues' commitment to solving homelessness and transforming lives one success story at a time, like Patricia, Lorena, and Samuel's. And with that, I'd like to introduce our final mayor speaker, the mayor of the city of Irvine, Farrakhan, my friend and neighbor.
Thank you, Mayor Lock-Dawson. And I want to start off by thanking our governor and our state legislators for the work that they have done in the past, and also our chair of the Big City Mayors for his leadership, Mayor Gloria. You know, we're at a point where the planning and delivery from the past years is resulting in putting people in shelters, providing them a path forward for permanent housing, giving them the support network of services and programs that is necessary. And overall, this is transitioning them into being functioning members of our society. It's giving them that hope that they can progress, that they can do the things that every person should be able to do and live a fulfilling life. And overall, reducing the number of homeless in our communities, as you can see, for us in Irvine, we've been doing this work for many, many years. On our own, using our general funds, we have built a little over 5,000 units of affordable housing, many of which come with support services. But what we can't do is continue on that trajectory without the help from the state. And that's where the HAP dollars, the continuation and the permanency of the HAP dollars is so critical for us to continue doing the work that we do. You've heard it from the mayors that previously spoke. You've seen the numbers that have been presented. We're really doing the job on the ground because we know our communities. We know where the needs are, and we know how to deliver it. But again, we cannot do that without the support from the state. And as we're moving forward, we need to make sure that these long-term solutions that we are held accountable for. And that's something that you'll see in the numbers that we're providing today and that we'll continue providing to show how this funding is actually resulting in people being supported, put into housing, and given a path forward towards permanent housing. And so we are open to the transparency and providing the data because we know we're getting the job done. And that's what mayors do best. And so for us, it's making sure that as we're standing here to get together here united, we're asking for this funding to be permanent and to continue and to be no less than $1 billion. And that's what's going to help us get to a point where we are actually making sure that there's no one left behind and that everyone has a place to call home. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Khan, and thank you to all my mayoral colleagues as well as Ms. Coleman from the League Cities to be here to make our feelings and our priorities clear to the governor, to the legislature, and to the public. We've given you plenty of content, and we're happy to do one-on-ones when we break. But if there's any questions that you want to give to us at this time as a group, we're happy to try and field those, or again, happy to do those as one-on-ones.
Mayor Gloria,
Yes.
Daniela Pardo with Spectrum News. Just curious, where are the conversations with leadership on making HAP funding permanent?
So those are ongoing. As you heard from our colleagues, it's not just the dollar amount of no less than $1 billion, but it's the ongoing commitment. We have been here, as Mayor Steinberg has mentioned, year after year, really making both of those arguments. And to his, I think, very well stated point, this has been going on for multiple years. It feels nearly permanent, but none of us can appropriate this money as though it was permanent. And I'll tell you how this works out. As I've gone to expand our shelter capacity in the city of San Diego, like literally doubling the number of offerings we have for unhoused individuals in my city, if we're, say, leasing a hotel site to turn into a non-congregate shelter for senior citizens, I can't do it on a multi-year basis because the funding I'm using from the state is not provided to me on a multi-year basis. What does that mean? Well, that means the price point's probably not as good as I'd like it to be. That ongoing commitment, whether it's from the people who staff it to the folks who maintain it, is not able to be made. So there are real impacts from not having the ongoing nature. So in a difficult budget year, for the governor and legislature to maintain the funding is deeply appreciated. We're asking to take that additional step and go forward and make it ongoing. We think that we can yield more results at better price points with that kind of commitment. But to your question, those are ongoing conversations and precisely one of the main reasons that we're here today. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to weigh in additional on that.
And then just curious, what are you guys proposing in terms of cuts to help make HAP permanent?
Well, Mayor Bass and Mayor Steinberg. So here's the. Let me say this. I think the seriousness of this issue is illustrated by the mayors who are here today. All of us are in our respective cities right now as we speak, proposing our own budgets, often filling significant budget gaps. We're doing our labor negotiations. We're doing a multitude of very difficult tasks, but we're here today because we see this as critical for doing the work. We know how to balance budgets. We have to do it in our own cities. I think our hope and our expectation is that the situation we currently find ourselves in, whether it's the city of San Diego or the state of California, is temporary, and that the ebbs and flows of an economy and of revenues will allow some of the worst cuts to be avoided. And as that's the case, we would hope that homelessness, being the number one issue that you hear from all of these cities, again, these are cities up and down the state, we all identify this as number one. So even in a difficult budget year, our belief is that the governor and the legislature will continue to prioritize solutions to this challenge, and we can find a way to make this work. If invited in, we'll work with anyone to figure out a way to try and make that ongoing. But in the many billions of dollars the state of California, hundreds of billions of dollars the state of California will spend this year, we believe $1 billion on an ongoing basis is something that is more than practical and achievable, even in a difficult budget year. Anyone else want to add to that?
Mr. Mayor, you spoke to accountability, referencing the audit. Why should you be given $1 billion when it's already been shown there's issues with tracking that money and the progress? So why now? How will this money be different moving forward?
Well, that is probably one I'll tap my fellow mayors in, because that the audits that you're talking about, there was two. There was one for the state resources, right, and then there was one that was specific to the city of San Diego and the city of San Jose. With regard to the city of San Diego, I mean, one of the observations or findings in that particular audit was that we need more shelter beds. They have no quarrel from me on that. We absolutely need it. And one of the ways we do it is to make HAP level or increase funding and make it ongoing. So, it's sort of a circular situation. One of the other findings was that we need to provide that data on one website. Now, it's called san diego.gov, so I'm not sure what the state auditor is getting at in that particular case, but I will build a whole nother website to provide that data in one place if that is so inclined. What I should be judged on is the fact that in April of 2021, my city had roughly 1,000 shelter beds. Fast forward to today, we have over 2,000 shelter beds serving thousands of San Diegans. So again, I have no concerns with providing whatever data and accountability that the governor and the legislature wants to ask me for. You've heard every mayor up here say the same exact thing. We say that because we believe we can show very specifically where these dollars are going and the impact they're having. You heard from some of my colleagues about what they would think the state would look like without these dollars. So basically, here's the thing. If HAP were to be reduced, unquestionably the programs that we're currently using those fundings for would have to be reduced or eliminated. And that would push more people out on the street. That is not what any Californian wants, right? And so when we're saying $1 billion, we're asking for a level of funding to maintain our status quo. We would love that ongoing nature so we can drive more results for everyone. But at the end of the day, what the audit from my city said was that they want more data, they want more transparency, and they want more beds. The way to do that is to make HAP at least $1 billion and to make that funding ongoing. do my colleagues one? Please.
I think what you've heard is that mayors are willing to be accountable. We're accountable every day in our own cities where people come up to us and contact us in the grocery store or ask us what we're doing about potholes or homelessness. What we can't be held accountable for, though, are things that are outside of our control. I can't be held accountable for weather in my city because I have no control over that. But the one thing that I can control is what we're doing with the money in terms of providing shelter beds, the services that we provide, and getting those folks into permanent housing. I can provide those numbers in Fresno, and I know every mayor up here can provide that as well. The challenge we face sometimes is how do we prevent homelessness? How do we prevent landlords from increasing rents? Or the escalation of energy bills that cause people to become homelessness or homeless. How do we stop our foster youth that are timing out in the foster youth system from becoming homeless? I don't know that we should be held accountable for those things, but I'm more than happy to be held accountable for the number of shelter beds I provide, the services that we provide, the permanent housing that we provide, and transitioning those people back into a productive life. We have the numbers to show that.
Other questions?
How has Proposition 1 kind of changed this conversation, the reallocation of funding?
I think we have the dean of our caucus can cover that.
Dean. Well, I started my comments by saying that cities are not health and human services agencies or homeless service agencies. And Proposition 1 is crucial if we're going to make even greater progress on this problem. Because Proposition 1 requires that counties spend 30% of their collective billions of dollars annually on housing and housing supports for the people that we are serving. 35% on the wraparound service model that has been proven to get people off the streets and keep them permanently housed with the supports and the services that they need, so many people need. Now, there is also a huge accountability component of Proposition 1. The state, together with the counties, are going to be responsible for developing the basic outcomes, the things that people want to see: reduced days of homelessness for people, reduced hospitalizations, reduce arrests, reduce cycling in and out of our county jails. And the counties are going to be responsible for reporting that data every single year. That, combined with the HHAP investments, really gives the cities and counties the opportunity to work together, because we cannot do this alone. We do not provide mental health services or substance abuse services by and large, except where we get really creative, but we don't have an ongoing funding stream to do so. Proposition 1 is a key piece of our success, and I'm glad that it passed. Barely passed, but it passed. Oh. It doesn't, Proposition 1 cannot supplant existing funding. It has to be additive to what we are spending. Counties, by the way, get HAP allocations as well. But Proposition 1 is additional money, especially the bond money, and then, of course, the old Mental Health Services Act, to supplement HAP on the housing side and on the service side to help us get more people off the streets.
If I may just add, I think this is an important issue to bring up with this group. When I was in the legislature only a few years ago, the idea of conservatorship reform was unthinkable and politically impossible. What you've seen this group come for the last 3 years or so is to push for behavioral health reform, and I believe we achieved that with the passage of Senate Bill 43 last fall. And then with the passage now of Proposition 1, you have the funding to actually make that real. So the policy in place with Senate Bill 43, and now with the resources given to us by the voters of California, we have the ability to finally take care of what has been a very vexing issue, I think, for me and for many of my colleagues, because we don't provide behavioral health services, because we don't have the social services jurisdiction issue. But we do receive the phone calls from folks who are observing folks having behavioral health crises on street corners in our city, cities and say, why can't you do more about it? Well, we couldn't do much about it, but we've come back here year after year to get the policy change, Senate Bill 43, and then get the resources by campaigning for Proposition 1. It will not change overnight, but as someone who's been very frustrated by receiving those phone calls and not being able to respond the way that I think I would like to, or that the caller would like me to, we will now have the legal basis for being able to try and serve folks who previously have been ignored, and now the resources to actually get them proper care. I think that's a game changer, and it cannot come fast enough. And I ask for your continued partnership in asking the counties who are responsible for implementing much of this to make sure the job gets done. We will continue to do our part to provide the shelter beds, but we need the behavioral health beds and the behavioral health workers to make sure these people who are, again, kind of generally being ignored can finally get the care and get off the streets. It is an absolute embarrassment that people who are that vulnerable and that sick have been left to languish on the streets. But because of big city mayors like the folks who are up here coming up to Sacramento year after year, we've got the policy change and we've got the resources. Now let's get the job done.
Can I just add one thing?
You can,
to that,
you can do
please?
your Dale
Thank you.
Steinberg.
No, whatever. So, one of the reasons the big city mayors are not afraid of accountability is because we're actually taking the money and we're translating it into beds. In my city, I didn't give my statistics. When I started, we had less than 100 beds we were funding and operating. We're now up to 1,350, largely as a result of HAP. And those stories are similar across the spectrum. With regard to Prop 1, as hopeful as it is, and it is very hopeful, and I'm glad the voters passed it, implementation is everything. It's everything. We've implemented. But we need our county partners to implement with the same urgency. When we say when the state says 30% set aside for housing supports, those dollars need to go to work right away as soon as it goes into effect in 2026. Same with the full service partnerships, the wraparound service model. One of our frustrations, or at least mine, I'll speak for myself, is that we have these tools and these mental health services and programs, and sometimes there isn't enough of a connection to the people actually living in our tent encampments. We hope that Prop 1 will make that situation better, but it's all about implementation and outcome-based accountability.
I think that's
That's a wrap.
got some hungry mayors. Thank you all so much for your time this afternoon. Thank you, mayors, for being here. Big kudos to Darrell Steinberg, who's this, as he mentioned, is his last time here as Big City Mayors Coalition. Darrell, thank you for your great leadership. We look forward to updating you on our progress later today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.